My wife invited me to her office party to humiliate me with her rich male boss. I dragged them to the dance floor and beat them while everyone laughed. My name's Marco Alvarez, and my hands look like they've survived a war, because, in a way, they have. You don't spend 12 years running wires through half-finished buildings, crawling through insulation that feels like itchy regret, and dodging foremen who swear they just need 5 more minutes, without developing a few calluses and a thick skin to match. My palms could sand wood without the paper, and my knuckles have stories that don't need subtitles. I'm 34, a union electrician, which means I fix things most people don't even realize are broken until their coffee maker dies and their Wi-Fi router starts blinking like it's in Morse code distress. It's honest work, loud work, and the kind that leaves you sore in all the right ways. I like the smell of solder and burnt copper in the morning. I like the way coffee tastes after a 12-hour shift, when your muscles hum with exhaustion but your mind feels weirdly peaceful, like the world makes sense again. That's the thing about real work. It gives you a conscience you can sleep with. And then there's home, where I used to think peace lived. Olivia Grant Alvarez, my wife. 32, stunning, driven, the kind of woman who could negotiate peace treaties or start wars depending on whether her oat milk latte had enough foam. When we met, she used to brag about how my sturdy hands made her feel safe. Now she calls me bless his heart when her friends from corporate come over for wine and networking therapy. And let me tell you, when a woman from upper management says bless his heart, she doesn't mean I love him. She means he still uses coupons. Back then, we were small, loud, and stupidly happy. Our first apartment smelled like paint and cheap Chinese takeout, and we thought success meant affording the medium combo instead of the small. I'd come home covered in dust. She'd come home with spreadsheets and stories about coworkers who couldn't tell the difference between a deadline and a grave, and somehow, it worked. She loved my mess, my grease-stained fingers, the way I'd fall asleep mid-sentence on the couch after fixing the sink. I loved her ambition, her wild ideas, her way of making a broken life plan sound like a TED Talk with wine. We were electric, pun intended. But something changed when she got promoted. I didn't realize it at first. It came slow, like corrosion on a wire. She started dressing sharper, staying out later, talking about branding like she was auditioning to be a human LinkedIn post. She started eating salads that cost more than my work boots and saying words like synergy without flinching. I'm not sure when I lost her, but I know the first sign was when she looked at my hands and said, "You should moisturize more." It wasn't cruel, it was casual. That's what made it sting. That casual tone, the one people use when they've already decided they're better than you but haven't sent you the memo yet. I kept working, kept fixing, kept pretending it was fine. That's what guys like me do. We fix things, even when it's not our mess. I'd cook dinner, keep the house humming, and nod like I didn't notice how she laughed louder at her phone than she ever did at my jokes. Her world turned shiny, polished, and filtered. Mine stayed practical and noisy. I'd come home from a day of wiring a hospital. Yeah, the place where lives depend on light. And she'd be sitting on the couch, glass of wine in one hand, laptop open, saying something like, "We need to talk about personal growth." Which, by the way, is never followed by anything good. She'd tell me about her new projects, her team, her boss who saw potential in her. I'd nod, because I was proud, or at least I wanted to be. But her tone changed somewhere between her third raise and her first company retreat. It wasn't "we're building a life" anymore. It was "I'm building a future." You catch that? Not we. I. That's when I realized I wasn't her partner anymore. I was her before picture. Funny thing about pride, it's invisible until someone tries to take it from you. Mine didn't fit into her new world. My pride came from doing work that mattered, from knowing that when a kid's nightlight turns on or a grocery store freezer keeps the milk cold. That's me. That's my work, my sweat, my skill. It's not fancy, but it's real. Try saying that in a room full of people who think manual labor means typing faster. I remember one night, she came home late, again. I was sitting at the kitchen table, eating leftover spaghetti and watching reruns of Dirty Jobs. She breezed and smelling like perfume and potential, kissed me on the cheek like you pat a loyal dog, and said, "You wouldn't believe how exhausting it is to lead." I wanted to say, "Try carrying 50 feet of wire up a ladder in August." But I didn't. I just nodded and offered her some spaghetti, which she declined because carbs at night are bad optics. She talked about KPIs and clients, and I realized I was nodding at a stranger. She wasn't my Olivia anymore. She was Olivia 2.0, optimized for career advancement. Her laugh was shorter, her hugs were rarer, and her eyes were always somewhere else. On her phone, her planner, or maybe on someone who didn't come home smelling like a job site. The distance between us wasn't loud. It was quiet, clinical. The kind of silence that sneaks up on you and makes you question if you ever knew how to talk in the first place. I started working more overtime, partly for the money, mostly for the noise. Work doesn't judge you. Wires don't roll their eyes. Circuits don't tell you to smile more. One Saturday morning, she had brunch plans with the team. I asked if I could come along, half joking. She looked at me over her coffee and said, "It's more of a professional thing, babe." Then she smiled, the kind of tight smile you give a kid who wants to play in traffic. You wouldn't really fit in. That one hurt. I wanted to ask, fit in where? Your world? Your life? Your bed? But instead, I just nodded again. That's the thing about men like me. We're taught that silence is noble. That if you wait long enough, things fix themselves. But marriages aren't like circuits. They don't just reconnect when you flip the breaker. I started noticing her phone more. The late-night texts. The new perfume. The extra effort before meetings. But I told myself not to think like that. I told myself she was just chasing dreams, not chasing someone. I held on because that's what you do when you've built something with your hands. You protect it, even when it's cracked. Then came the phrase that ended my peace. She was on the phone with one of her friends. You know the type. Voice like champagne, laugh like nails. They were gossiping, sipping, talking about promotions. And I heard Olivia say, "Oh, Marco? Bless his heart, he tries." I don't know what burned more, the words or the tone. That tries was heavy. It was pity disguised as affection, and it hit like a live wire. That night, I sat on the porch with a beer and stared at my hands. Grease in the creases, scratches from a conduit job, a couple of calluses that looked like battle scars. Hands that built things, fixed things, carried her through years of rent and ramen. Hands that weren't enough anymore. I flexed them and wondered how something so capable could feel so useless. I started planning something. Not revenge, not yet. Just clarity. I wanted to see her world for myself. The suits, the smiles, the lies wrapped in luxury. I didn't know it yet, but 2 weeks later, those hands, these hands, would make headlines for all the wrong reasons. But that night, I just sat there, listening to the hum of the streetlights, the faint sound of someone's TV, and the silence of a marriage that had already shorted out. I thought about pride again, how it doesn't show up on resumes or balance sheets. It shows up when you're the one fixing the power that keeps their world bright, and they don't even notice. I took another sip of beer, leaned back in my chair, and whispered to no one in particular. "You can take the shine, Liv. I'll keep the spark." And for the first time in months, that made me smile. Because I didn't know what was coming. Not yet, but I could feel it in my bones, like the faint buzz of electricity right before it arcs. Something was about to blow, and for once, it wasn't my fault. It was hers. And that thought, that was the first time in a long time that my calloused hands felt clean. You ever notice how a house can feel like it's shrinking even when the walls don't move? That's what living with Olivia started to feel like. A slow, invisible compression. The air in our home used to smell like garlic bread and cheap wine. Now it smelled like expensive perfume and tension you could butter toast with. My wife had officially become a high-functioning ghost, present enough to leave her heels by the door, but gone enough to forget I existed past breakfast. Her job became this living organism that ate time and spat out excuses. Late client dinner, she'd say. Urgent off-site strategy, she'd text. If corporate jargon had calories, she'd have been morbidly obese. I'd be home reheating leftovers while she was somewhere downtown sipping $19 cocktails with people who called themselves creatives. Meanwhile, I was the guy unclogging drains and paying utilities, the uncredited extra in her career movie. I tried to roll with it. I mean, I'm an electrician, not a poet. My love language is fixing things. I see a problem, I grab a tool. But how the hell do you fix someone whose favorite words are "I'm fine"? Those two words, man. They're like the customer service hold music of relationships. Endless, annoying, and fake. The signs were small at first. Her phone started living face down, like it had privacy rights. Her laughter changed too. Used to be the kind that bounced off the walls. Now it came in short, curated bursts. Like she was auditioning for best laugh in a supporting role. She stopped wearing her wedding ring to work events. When I asked, she said, "It doesn't go with the outfit." Yeah, well, neither did lying, but that didn't stop her. And then came the networking quickies. That's what she called them. Short meetings with big clients, usually late, always vague. The word quickie should never sound that professional. Every time she said it, I could feel my dignity trying to jump off a bridge. One night, she came home at midnight, heels in hand, smelling like a perfume sample named Infidelity. I was on the couch, pretending to watch a game I didn't care about. She looked surprised to see me awake, which was interesting, considering I lived there. "You're up?" she asked, like I was a raccoon that wandered in from the trash cans. I shrugged. "Yeah, the couch and I are doing some team building." She didn't laugh. She never did anymore. That's when I started paying attention. Not the paranoid kind of attention, the blue-collar kind, the one you use on a suspicious fuse. You don't accuse, you just observe until it either hums right or blows up. Her coworkers started popping up in conversation more than I liked. Marcus Langley, for instance, the guy whose suit probably cost more than my first car. He was mentoring her, apparently. Then there was Henry Caldwell, married but still wearing cologne like he was on sale at Macy's. And Trish from HR. Ah yes, Trish. The kind of woman who complimented you just to remind you she didn't mean it. She told me once, "You should smile more, Marco. You've got such strong features." Translation: you look too working class for this conversation. Every name she mentioned came with that weird softness people use when they're saying more than they mean. The "Marcus said something hilarious today" tone, followed by a smile that didn't belong to me. I didn't need a lie detector. I had instincts, caffeine, and decades of watching people try to hide sparks behind smoke. Then came the invitation. "We're having a company party next week," she said one evening, scrolling her phone like the words were a casual afterthought. I blinked. "You want me to come?" She smiled without looking up. "Of course. It'll be fun." That smile was corporate, polite, polished, and about as warm as a freezer. She didn't want me there for fun. She wanted me there for optics. Now, if you've ever been married long enough, you know there's a specific kind of laugh that's not humor, it's survival. I gave her that laugh. "You want me to be your +1 at a corporate event?" I said, pretending I didn't already know the answer. "Won't I lower the room's income average?" She smirked. "Don't be dramatic, Marco. Just dress appropriately." Which is rich coming from someone whose last casual Friday outfit could have hosted a TED Talk. Then she added, "Oh, and if anyone asks, just say you work in facilities." Facilities. Like that's a magic word that turns electricians into harmless mascots. She might as well have said, "Don't make them uncomfortable with your blue-collar reality." I nodded, biting back the dozen comebacks I wanted to say. Things like, "Sure, I'll be the token husband from the land of manual labor." Instead, I smiled and said, "Got it. I'll practice saying synergy." But something in me sparked that night. Maybe it was pride, maybe curiosity, maybe both. I wanted to see her world. The world where everyone wore ambition like armor and looked down on people who actually made the lights work. In the days before the party, Olivia turned into a blur. Phone calls in the bathroom, texts in the middle of dinner, quick trips for errands that smelled suspiciously like alibis. I tried not to pry, because nothing says needy husband like asking your wife who she's texting while she's optimizing revenue flow. Instead, I threw myself into work. Ricky, my buddy at the union, noticed the dark circles under my eyes. "You look like a man who's about to attend his own funeral," he joked. I grunted, "Corporate party." He winced. "Oh, so yeah, same thing." Ricky was the kind of guy who could diagnose your mood like it was a busted circuit. "Let me guess," he said. "You're going to show up, pretend to like everyone, and drink until you forget how much you hate polyester suits." I nodded. "Basically." He slapped my shoulder. "Bring a camera. There's always at least one HR disaster at those things." I laughed, not knowing he'd just predicted my future. At home, Olivia practiced her introductions like she was rehearsing for Broadway. "This is Marco," she'd say to the mirror, smiling in that tight way that made her eyes look corporate and her soul look outsourced. "He's in facilities." I'd watch from the couch, beer in hand, and mutter, "You forgot husband." The night before the party, she spent 2 hours choosing an outfit and 0 minutes asking if I was okay. I sat there watching her, realizing I didn't recognize the woman in front of me anymore. She was sleek, strategic, and so distant she might as well have had her own zip code. She looked at me and said, "You'll wear that navy suit, right? The one she picked out last year for my cousin's wedding." I nodded. "Yeah, the one that makes me look like a bank loan denial." She rolled her eyes, grabbed her phone, and disappeared into another quick call. I stared at the empty doorway, feeling the kind of loneliness that's heavier than silence. You know that weird mix of anger and sadness that just sits in your chest like wet cement? That's where I was. I wasn't mad she was changing. People change. I was mad she thought she could drag me into her new world and expect me to blend in like wallpaper. But I said nothing. I showered, shaved, ironed the suit, even polished my boots. Yeah, boots, because screw their loafers. I looked at myself in the mirror and thought, if she wants optics, she's gonna get a damn masterpiece. The morning of the party, she left early, claiming she had to help set up. I spent the day on a work site replacing a burned-out breaker and listening to Ricky talk about his girlfriend's obsession with true crime. He looked at me mid-sandwich and said, "You sure you're up for that party, man? You look like a guy walking into a trap." I smirked. "Ricky, I'm an electrician. I live in traps." But deep down, I knew he was right. The whole thing smelled off, like wires crossed behind the walls. There were too many late nights, too many inside jokes, too many glances at her phone that she'd flip upside down the second I walked by. My gut told me something ugly was coming, and my gut's never wrong. It's powered by bad coffee and worse instincts. That evening, I stood in front of the mirror one last time, adjusting my tie like it was a choke collar. I looked sharp, I'll admit. Navy suit, clean shave, hair slicked back enough to pass for a banker. But underneath all that polish was a man who'd already started unplugging from the illusion. My hands, those same calloused hands she mocked, adjusted the tie perfectly. Funny how the same hands that build cities were now prepping for social war. When Olivia walked in, she barely looked at me, just said, "Good, you look presentable." Presentable, like a damn prop. Then she smiled that empty smile again and said, "Let's make tonight seamless." And I nodded, even though every nerve in me screamed something's coming. As we headed out the door, she linked her arm with mine, not out of affection, but optics, just like I thought. And right then, I made a silent promise to myself. Whatever trap this night was setting, whatever lie was waiting behind those champagne glasses and fake smiles, I wasn't going to just stand there and be part of the decor. Because a man can take a lot, mockery, distance, silence, but when you start treating him like background furniture, that's when his fuse hits capacity. And mine. Oh, it was humming, just waiting for the switch to flip. The week before the party felt like that tense silence before a thunderstorm. You can't see lightning yet, but your bones can feel it buzzing in the air. Olivia moved around the house like a politician during campaign season. Smile rehearsed, answers ready, and emotions filed neatly under "not now." She was on her phone so much I started wondering if she'd legally married her email. And me? I played along like the world's dumbest magician's assistant, pretending not to see the smoke while she practiced disappearing. Every night that week, she came home later, smelling less like home and more like someone else's idea of success. Designer perfume, champagne, and that faint trace of deceit that clings to ambition. She'd toss a kiss in my direction, call it affection, then vanish into our bedroom to answer a few messages. You know what's wild? When your wife starts guarding her phone like it's nuclear launch codes, you start timing her bathroom breaks. One Wednesday night, I walked in from a 10-hour shift, hands raw, back tight, and found her pacing in the living room, Bluetooth in her ear, saying things like presentation optics and Marcus will handle the deck. I froze mid-step. Marcus. There it was again, that name sliding through our house like a ghost who didn't pay rent. I stood there, sweat drying on my shirt, listening. She didn't see me. She was smiling, voice soft, the kind of tone she used to save for me when life was simple and love wasn't scheduled between calendar invites. When she hung up, I asked, casual as a man standing in quicksand, "That Marcus guy, he your new boss?" She jumped a little, then gave me that fake laugh women use when they're lying but trying to sound adorable. "No, babe. He's just part of the team." "Right. And I'm just part of the furniture." I didn't press. Pressing makes you look jealous, and jealous husbands get treated like outdated software. Buggy, insecure, waiting for an update that'll never come. Instead, I poured myself a beer, leaned against the counter, and said, "Tell Marcus I said hi." She froze, then smiled too quickly. Of course. You ever see a smile that's a full confession? Yeah, that was it. The next day, she started talking about the company party like it was a royal gala. "We're doing a rooftop event downtown," she said, eyes bright, voice animated. "City skyline views, live band, open bar." I grinned. Ah, yes, nothing screams teamwork like overpriced finger food and fake laughter. She rolled her eyes so hard I swear I heard the strain. "Marco, please. It's important. My directors will be there. It's a huge opportunity." I sipped my coffee and muttered, "For who?" She didn't answer. That evening, I found myself staring at my closet like it was a battlefield. Olivia wanted me to blend in, not embarrass her. I didn't have corporate armor, no tailored suits or designer shoes. My wardrobe was mostly work shirts, jeans, and hoodies that smelled faintly of solder and masculinity. So, I did something stupid. I went shopping. At the mall, I walked into one of those fancy men's stores where the mannequins looked like they had trust funds. A salesman with slicked back hair and a smirk that cost extra asked if I was shopping for a big event. I said, "Yeah, my wife's company party." He gave me the kind of look people reserve for rescue dogs. "Oh," he said, "a corporate one?" His tone implied I'd need divine intervention to survive. I nodded. "Yep, I'm going as the entertainment." He laughed nervously, not realizing I wasn't joking. He sold me a navy suit, slim fit, modern, and just uncomfortable enough to remind me that it wasn't mine. Olivia approved, of course. "Finally," she said when I showed her. "You look like you belong somewhere." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Because here's the thing, belonging shouldn't come with a receipt. Meanwhile, Ricky, my union buddy, noticed my mood dropping faster than voltage in a blackout. We were on a construction site fixing a blown circuit when he said, "You look tense, man. Like someone's rewiring your life without your consent." I chuckled. "You could say that." He raised a brow. "Is this about Olivia?" Ricky's got a sixth sense for trouble, probably from being divorced twice. He smirked. "You bringing her to this fancy shindig, or what?" I sighed. "Other way around." He grinned. "Ah, she's bringing you for display purposes. Classic trophy husband maneuver." I glared. "I'm not a trophy." He nodded. "No, you're the warning label. Do not underestimate quiet men." I laughed for the first time all week. "You're an idiot." He shrugged. "A wise idiot." That night, I got home to find Olivia sitting cross-legged on the couch, laptop open, typing with purpose. I asked, "Need help with anything?" She barely looked up. "No, it's confidential." Funny, how that word started creeping into our marriage. Confidential. Like we'd signed NDAs instead of vows. I sat down across from her. "You nervous about the party?" She paused, then smiled. Excited. But her knee was bouncing, and her hands wouldn't stop fidgeting. That wasn't excitement. That was guilt doing cardio. I tried humor. "Should I bring my toolbox? Maybe fix a few light fixtures while I'm there." She groaned. "Please, Marco. Just don't make this harder." I raised an eyebrow. "Make what harder?" Her eyes flicked away. "Nothing. Just never mind." That "never mind" lived in my head rent-free all night. A few days later, she started rehearsing how we'd act at the party. "If someone asks, you say you work in facilities," she repeated. "It's simpler." I looked at her. "Simpler than what?" "The truth." She sighed, frustrated. "It's not about lying. It's about image." I leaned back, arms crossed. "Image of what?" "That your husband doesn't use his hands for anything that might chip a manicure." She snapped her laptop shut. "God, Marco, why do you always make things difficult?" I laughed. That short, bitter laugh that sounds like disappointment in disguise. "I don't make things difficult, Liv. You just don't like it when things aren't shiny." She went quiet. Dead quiet. The kind of quiet that fills a room like smoke. Then she said, low and sharp, "You wouldn't understand." That sentence, man, that was the breaker tripping in my chest. "You wouldn't understand. That's how you talk to strangers, not to the guy who fixed your first apartment's power when you blew a fuse using the microwave and the hairdryer at the same time." After that, the air in our house felt charged. We moved around each other like co-workers in a small office, polite, but waiting for HR to intervene. I cooked dinner one night. Steak, her favorite. She barely ate. I'm not really hungry, she said. Then her phone buzzed, and she smiled. Not at me. At the screen. I didn't say a word. I just nodded and poured myself another drink. By Friday, Ricky was texting me jokes like, "Don't forget to take pictures of the snakes in suits." I told him, "If I end up in jail, delete my browser history." He replied with a gif of a man sipping beer with the caption "Legend incoming." Saturday arrived. The big night. Olivia was out early, probably setting the stage for her perfect little image. I took my time getting ready, shaving slow, buttoning that stupid navy suit she loved so much. I caught my reflection in the mirror and thought, "You clean up good, kid." But under the suit, I still felt like the guy holding a wrench in a room full of wine glasses. When she came home to pick me up, she looked stunning. Black dress, hair like a shampoo commercial, and that confidence that came with knowing she'd be the star. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. It flickered, brief and tired. Maybe guilt, maybe nerves. Maybe both. "You look good," she said flatly. "Tried it, just go with the flow tonight." I smirked. "What's the flow?" Fake laughter and overpriced canapes. She rolled her eyes. "Marco, please." I slipped my hands into my pockets. "You ever think maybe the reason you're nervous isn't me?" She froze for a half second, just enough to confirm everything I'd suspected. Then she forced a laugh. "You're ridiculous." "Maybe. But ridiculous people tend to notice the cracks before the polished ones do." We got in the car, and the silence was thick. She scrolled through her phone, thumbs moving fast, probably texting someone from the team. I looked out the window at the city lights, every flickering bulb, every street lamp. My world. The one I built, literally. Somewhere between the neon and the skyline. I realized something simple. You can't build a life with someone who's ashamed of how you make yours. By the time we pulled into the downtown garage, I already knew. This wasn't a night for celebration. This was an ambush wrapped in confetti. The air itself smelled like warning. Expensive cologne, tension, and just a trace of betrayal. She turned to me before stepping out and said, "Remember what I said." Facilities. I grinned, slow and deliberate. "Oh, don't worry. I remember everything." She didn't get it then. She thought I was just being difficult. But I'd already started piecing things together, the late nights, the texts, the tone changes. I didn't know how it would end yet, but I knew one thing. Whatever trap she was setting, she'd made one mistake. She forgot who she married. And if there's one thing an electrician knows better than anyone, it's how to handle a live wire without getting burned. You ever walk into a place so polished that even your self-esteem starts checking for dirt? That's what this rooftop party felt like, a temple for the rich, the vain, and the recently promoted. The kind of place where napkins have resumes, and even the ice cubes look judgmental. The city lights stretched below us like a silent audience, and every guest in sight looked like they came pre-approved by a credit bureau. I swear the air itself smelled like mint, money, and mild dishonesty. I showed up 5 minutes late on purpose, not because I wanted to make an entrance, but because I needed time to remember how to breathe in a world that hated calluses. Olivia was already there, of course, looking like sin dipped in silk. Black dress, heels sharp enough to file complaints, hair that screamed sponsorship deal incoming. She spotted me by the bar, gave me a quick wave, and air-kissed my cheek. You know, that polite marriage version of affection that says, "We still have joint taxes, but nothing else." Her lips barely touched skin. "Remember," she whispered, "facilities." The word rolled off her tongue like a threat wrapped in perfume. I nodded, but my grin said otherwise. Facilities, my ass. The music was soft jazz, the kind of background noise rich people use to feel cultured. I grabbed a drink and surveyed the room like a man who knows he's being judged by his shoe leather. Everywhere I looked, there were people pretending to be busy while mentally competing over whose watch cost more. A waiter floated by with a tray of something that looked like microscopic food on giant plates. I took one bite. It tasted like regret with a hint of lemon. Olivia glided through the crowd like she owned the place. Every handshake, every laugh, perfectly calibrated for maximum upward mobility. I stayed behind, nursing my beer like it was emotional support. A woman from marketing, name tag said Jessica, stopped near me, glanced at my calloused hands, and smiled the way people do at charity events. "Oh, you must be Marco," she said, voice dripping with polite curiosity. Olivia's husband. The pause before husband could have filled a canyon. Union electrician, I added, just to watch her flinch. You know, the people who make sure the lights don't go out during your PowerPoint presentations. She laughed, a little too high-pitched. Oh, that's wonderful. We really couldn't do it without you. She said it like she was talking to a utility bill. I smiled. You'd be surprised how often I hear that right before people trip a breaker. Her laughter died faster than her fake sincerity. I excused myself and headed toward the balcony before I said something career-ending on her behalf. The rooftop view was ridiculous. The city sprawled out like a neon heartbeat, traffic glittering, skyscrapers glowing like the gods were showing off. I leaned against the rail, letting the wind hit my face, thinking maybe, just maybe, I could make it through this night without needing bail money. Then Olivia appeared beside me, champagne in hand, smile plastered on. You're doing great, she said through clenched teeth. Just don't overdo it. Overdo what? I asked. Breathing? Blinking? Having opinions? She sighed. The kind that means she's trying not to ruin her makeup. Please, Marco. These people. I cut her off. Yeah, I know. They're your people now. Her eyes softened for a second, maybe even guilty, but the moment passed. Just behave, she whispered, and floated back into the crowd like a stock price. I watched her laugh with Marcus, the man himself. Tall, charming, the kind of guy who probably has a skincare routine and a therapist who calls him for advice. His suit looked tailored by angels, and his smile was pure PR. I'd seen that look before. The one men get when they think another man's wife is an open-door policy. He placed his hand on her back, guiding her toward a group of execs, and my jaw tightened so hard my teeth protested. Henry Caldwell was there too, silver-haired, smug, married, and giving midlife crisis in progress energy. He spotted me and nodded like we were part of the same club. We weren't. His handshake was soft, like he'd outsourced manual labor since birth. So, he said, Olivia tells us you're in facilities? I smiled politely. Yep. I keep the lights on so you can keep charging people in the dark. His face twitched. Humor, he said flatly. We love humor. The conversations around me were a masterclass in saying nothing with confidence. Our projections indicate sustainable growth, synergizing cross-departmental assets, optimizing holistic frameworks. I swear, half of them could have been speaking Morse code, and I'd still have understood more. I decided to have fun with it. When someone asked what I thought about their strategic outreach model, I said, it's shocking how much voltage it takes to power an idea that's useless. They laughed, thinking I was joking. I wasn't. An hour in, I'd become the designated curiosity. People approached me like I was an exotic exhibit, the working man in his natural habitat. They asked questions like, isn't it dangerous? Or don't you get tired? I answered with the kind of sarcasm you only sharpen through years of being underestimated. Oh, yeah, I said. Sometimes I get so tired of competence I just cry into a toolbox. Jessica returned, slightly tipsy now, and leaned close. Don't mind them, she said conspiratorially. They just don't get your simplicity. Simplicity. I almost spit my drink. You mean authenticity, I corrected. But sure, let's go with that. She laughed again, too loud, eyes glassy. Honestly, she whispered, your wife's lucky. Marcus is charming, but he's... She stopped herself, smiled, and walked away. That half-finished sentence hit harder than a live wire. I turned to find Olivia again. She was across the room, laughing too hard at something Marcus said, her hand brushing his arm like she was tracing her promotion with her fingertips. I didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. People say anger is loud, but that's a lie. The real kind, the kind that changes your pulse, is quiet. It hums, steady and certain, waiting for something to break. Eventually, she noticed me watching. She walked over, still smiling like the cameras were on. You look tense, she said sweetly. Want to dance? I blinked. You want me to dance? She shrugged. It'll make us look good. That right there, look good. That was the heart of it. We weren't partners anymore. We were optics. A marketing couple. I followed her to the dance floor anyway, because I'm a professional at doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. The band played some jazzy number. Olivia's hands rested on my shoulders lightly, like she was afraid to wrinkle her image. You could try to smile, she murmured. You could try to mean it, I murmured back. We moved in rhythm, her glancing around to make sure people were watching, me wondering how the hell we got here. The lights, the laughter, the money, all of it blurred until it felt like I was floating through someone else's life. When the song ended, she clapped politely and stepped back. "See," she said, "you can fit in when you try." I gave her the kind of grin that comes right before a storm. "Yeah," I said, "I'm a quick learner." The rest of the night unfolded like a bad sitcom. Forced laughs, fake compliments, and endless refills of sparkling hypocrisy. Olivia basked in it. I drifted, half listening to strangers brag about their quarterly bonuses. Around midnight, the rooftop air thinned. Conversations dulled. That's when I caught it. A whisper, faint but sharp, slicing through the music. Jessica again, stumbling near the bar, lipstick smudged and conscience leaking. She leaned toward me, breath reeking of secrets. "You didn't hear it from me," she slurred, "but your wife's been close. With Marcus. And Henry. For months. Time didn't stop. It just slowed enough for me to hear my heartbeat in stereo." I didn't react. Didn't shout. Didn't throw my drink like some dramatic movie scene. I just looked at her, searching her face for a lie. There wasn't one. Drunk people rarely invent pain that's specific. I looked toward Olivia. She was laughing again. That bright, hollow sound I used to love. Marcus was beside her. Henry nearby. All three sharing a world I'd been uninvited from. My stomach twisted, not from shock, but from confirmation. I'd known. Deep down, I'd known. The phone calls, the late nights, the polished apologies. This was just the punchline. I left Jessica mumbling into her cocktail and walked toward the far end of the rooftop, where a hallway led to a private office suite. That's when I saw Olivia slip away through that door, Marcus a step behind her. My pulse turned electric. I told myself, don't. But curiosity and pride are terrible co-pilots. The hallway was quiet, carpet muffling every step, music fading behind me. I stopped outside the door marked private. From the other side came muffled sounds, laughter, low voices, a sigh that didn't belong to networking. My hand shook as I reached for the handle, not from fear, but from finality. And then, I did the thing you're not supposed to do. I opened it. Inside, the world stopped pretending. Olivia, Marcus, the desk, the motion, the betrayal framed perfectly under fluorescent light. My brain went blank. No thoughts, no words, just white noise. She froze when she saw me, mouth open, eyes wide, mid-sin. Marcus stumbled back, shirt halfway buttoned, arrogance gone. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just stared at them, at her, and felt something in me die cleanly, efficiently, like a switch flipped. And then I smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was finished. I pulled out my phone, pressed record, and said quietly, "Say cheese." The universe didn't thunder. The city didn't blink. But somewhere between her gasp and his silence, I felt the charge of something inevitable building. Justice, revenge, whatever you want to call it. The kind of storm you can't stop once it's wired. And that's when I realized I might not have her polish, her charm, her world of glass and gloss. But I had the truth. And truth, when it hits power, always makes sparks. If you've never felt your whole life collapse in a single heartbeat, let me tell you, it doesn't come with fireworks or thunderclaps. It's quiet, real quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own pulse. When that office door swung open and I saw Olivia tangled up with Marcus and Henry. Yes, both of them, because apparently fidelity is too basic for executives. I didn't feel rage. Not yet. Rage is a luxury emotion. What I felt was disbelief dressed up as calm. Like my brain decided to hit pause before it melted. There she was, my wife. The woman who used to giggle when I'd burn pancakes, now starring in her own betrayal documentary under fluorescent lighting. I remember thinking, so this is how the hero dies, under an expense report and some imported perfume. I don't even know why I recorded it. Reflex, maybe. Some survival instinct whispered, you're gonna need receipts. My thumb hit record, and the phone caught everything. Her gasp, his startled grunt, and my silence thick enough to choke on. I didn't yell, didn't slam, didn't cry. I just watched. Marcus tried to straighten his tie like that would tie the moment back together. Henry grabbed his shirt, muttering something about misunderstandings. Yeah, buddy, misunderstandings don't usually involve belt buckles. Olivia's face twisted into something halfway between panic and PR management. Marco, wait, please, this isn't what it looks like, she blurted, because apparently betrayal scripts come with that default line. I raised an eyebrow. You sure? 'Cause it looks like a team-building exercise gone real hands-on. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She reached for me, and I stepped back. The distance between us felt biblical. Then something inside me snapped. Not loud, not messy, just clean. Like a breaker flipping after years of overload. I put my phone in my pocket, gave her one long look, and said, "You know what, Liv? I always said you were good at multitasking. Guess I just didn't realize how good." And then I walked out. Except I didn't make it far. I reached the edge of the hallway, heard the muffled music and laughter beyond the door, and something primal inside me said, "No, not yet." For months, I'd been humiliated in silence. I'd watched her rewrite our marriage into a LinkedIn success story and file my worth under miscellaneous. If this was going to end, it wasn't going to end quietly. I turned back, grabbed Marcus by his collar, still half-buttoned, smelling like cologne and sin, and dragged him out of the office. Henry followed, stammering excuses about consent and complex emotions. I didn't care. I'd gone full blue-collar justice. My fist connected with Marcus's jaw before I even realized I'd swung. There's something deeply satisfying about that first impact. The sound, the shock, the collective gasp of witnesses when they realize the show's about to start. He stumbled, clutching his face, and I followed with another. Not because I needed to, but because it felt righteous. Henry tried to intervene, which was adorable. I turned, caught him by his tie, and yanked hard enough to make him reconsider life choices. "You married, right?" I hissed. "Does your wife know you're out here auditioning for Soap Opera of the Year?" He stuttered something about boundaries. I helped him find one, the floor. Then I did something no man plans to do in his lifetime. I hauled both of them, half-dressed and panicked, back out onto the rooftop. The door banged open, the music cut off mid-beat, and 200 perfectly groomed heads turned in unison. If there's a sound for collective shock, that was it. The gasp that comes right before gossip is born. Olivia followed me out, screaming my name, mascara starting to melt under city lights. "Marco, stop!" she shouted, her voice high-pitched, desperate. But I wasn't listening to her anymore. I was listening to the crowd. The whispered, "Oh my God," the barely contained giggles, the sound of camera phones clicking like applause. I threw Marcus first, metaphorically, not over the edge, though the temptation was real, shoving him onto the dance floor like bad entertainment. "You see this clown?" I barked, voice echoing off glass and ego. "He's been doing overtime with my wife in your office." Gasps rippled like wind through wheat. I gestured toward Henry. "And this one, apparently management's a group project now." Marcus tried to speak, clutching his jaw, but I wasn't done. "Don't look so shocked," I said, scanning the room. "You people love teamwork, right? Hell, this is probably in the employee handbook. Maximize efficiency, share resources." Laughter erupted. Awkward at first, then genuine, then uncontrollable. Phones rose in the air, lights flashing, recording history. I caught sight of Jessica near the bar, wide-eyed, whispering "holy crap" like a prayer. The DJ froze, unsure whether to keep playing. I helped him decide by yelling, "Kill the music." Silence dropped, heavy and hot. Olivia stood at the center of it all. Hair perfect, dress impeccable, soul unraveling. "Marco," she pleaded, voice trembling, "please don't do this here." I tilted my head. "Oh, don't worry, sweetheart. You already did." Someone in the crowd, bless their petty heart, started clapping. Then another joined in. Within seconds, half the rooftop was applauding like they'd just witnessed a Broadway finale. That's the thing about corporate people. They'll cheer for anything that makes them feel alive. And right then, my breakdown was the hottest show in town. Olivia tried to speak again, but her words drowned under laughter. Marcus bolted for the elevator, clutching his face like a man running from Yelp reviews. Henry followed, tripping over his own dignity. Olivia turned back to me, tears streaming now, and whispered, "You've ruined everything." I smiled, not cruelly, just free. "No, Liv," I said softly. "You did." I pulled my wedding band off, feeling the indentation it left on my skin, and tossed it at her feet. It hit the floor with a tiny metallic click, the sound of finality. "You can keep that," I said. "It fits your collection of things you don't respect." The crowd parted as I walked out, phones still filming, whispers multiplying. Some were sympathetic, most were entertained. I didn't care. The night air hit my face, cool and sharp, and for the first time in months, I could breathe. In the elevator down, a security guard looked at me, then at the blood on my knuckles. "You good, man?" he asked, unsure whether to call backup or shake my hand. I smiled faintly. "Better than I've been in years." He nodded, like he got it. Maybe he did. By the time I hit the street, my phone was blowing up. Missed calls from Olivia, texts from Ricky. "Bro, what did you do?" And a dozen notifications from strangers tagging me in videos I hadn't even seen yet. Turns out, someone had caught my entire rooftop debut in glorious 4K. "Union guy exposes cheating executives at rooftop gala," the headline read. The comments section was a war zone. Half the internet crowned me a hero. The other half thought I needed therapy. Both were right. I walked 3 blocks to a late-night diner, the kind that smells like bacon grease and bad decisions, and sat at the counter, still in my wrinkled suit. The waitress, a woman with a name tag that said Doris, poured me coffee without asking. "You look like you've seen some things," she said, glancing at my bruised hand. I nodded. "Yeah, my wife's true personality." She didn't flinch, didn't pity me, just refilled the cup and said, "Better to find out now than after she drains your 401k. Wise woman. I sat there till sunrise, watching the city wake up while my world burned online. Every buzz of my phone was another stranger calling me king, legend, or that dude with the punch. It was funny. I'd spent my life fixing things people broke, and now I'd broken something no one could fix. And maybe that's what justice feels like. Messy, painful, but damn honest. By noon, Olivia finally stopped calling. Instead, she texted, "We need to talk." I stared at the words for a long time. Not angry, not hurt, just tired. I typed back, "Talk to HR. I'm sure they'll help you draft an apology." Then I turned off my phone and laughed until it hurt. That night, Ricky showed up at my place with a six-pack and a grin. "You're trending, man," he said, waving his phone. "Look." He played a video of me dragging Marcus and Henry across the floor while Olivia screamed in the background. The caption read, "When your man's union, but his patience ain't." I groaned. Fantastic. I always wanted fame for my uppercut form. Ricky cracked open a beer. "Don't worry, they're calling you Blue Lightning." Sounds badass. "Yeah," I muttered, taking a sip. "Until the lawsuits start." He chuckled. "Nah, they won't touch you. You're a folk hero now. Every guy who's ever been cheated on is buying you a drink in spirit." He paused, then added, "You gonna talk to her?" I shook my head. What's left to say? She already said everything with her actions. He nodded slowly. "Still, that was brutal, man. You okay?" I thought about it. The truth? I wasn't okay, but I was done pretending to be. "Yeah," I said finally. "I'm okay enough." We watched the clip again, because of course he replayed it, and somewhere between the laughter and the disbelief, I realized something important. Olivia had spent years chasing power, status, validation. Me? I just wanted peace. And peace doesn't come from looking polished. It comes from knowing you did what needed to be done, no matter how ugly it looked. So yeah, maybe I ruined her reputation. Maybe I embarrassed the hell out of myself. But when I looked at that video, I didn't see a broken man. I saw a man who finally stopped letting himself be dimmed by someone else's spotlight. And that, right there, was the start of my rebuild. The storm had passed, but the cleanup was all mine. I'd lost my wife, my patience, and maybe a bit of sanity. But I gained something rarer, freedom wrapped in chaos. And it smelled a hell of a lot better than her perfume. There are moments in a man's life that burn themselves into the permanent hard drive of your memory, and dragging 2 half-dressed executives across a rooftop full of horrified rich people was definitely one of mine. It wasn't premeditated. I didn't wake up that morning thinking, you know what would spice up my evening? Assault and viral fame. It just happened. Like muscle memory, except the muscle was pure rage. And maybe a little showmanship. When I first grabbed Marcus by the collar and hauled him out of that office, his cologne hit me so hard I almost got dizzy. The scent of money, arrogance, and regret in equal parts. He tried to mutter something like, "This isn't necessary," which was adorable coming from the guy who just had a meeting with my wife on a company desk. I gritted my teeth and said, "Buddy, this is long overdue." Henry, the backup dancer in this train wreck, was trying to hide behind a filing cabinet. "It was just a mistake," he squeaked. I cut him off. "Yeah, you definitely were. Now, let me paint this picture." Olivia's voice was somewhere behind me, shrill and panicked, shouting, "Marco, stop." but it sounded far away, like background noise in a bad dream. The music was still playing out on the rooftop, a jazzy number, upbeat, ironic. And there I was, dragging two men who probably billed their clients $500 an hour, across a marble floor that was worth more than my truck. Marcus's loafers squeaked against the tiles. Henry's belt clanged on the floor. It was chaos wrapped in satisfaction. I slammed the door open so hard it ricocheted off the wall, and suddenly, silence. 200 people stopped mid-laugh, mid-sip, mid-pretension, as I stepped out with my human trophies. If a record scratch had a face, it would have been that crowd. I looked like a mechanic who'd just stumbled into a Vogue party, dragging the CEO and the VP of disrespect behind me. Olivia was right behind me, screaming something I couldn't process. My brain was past language. I was pure electricity, crackling with betrayal and adrenaline. The first punch landed before I even thought about it. Right to Marcus's jaw, that satisfying crunch of knuckle meeting consequence. He stumbled back, eyes wide, clutching his face like his stock options just crashed. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a champagne glass. Somewhere in the corner, I swear I heard someone whisper, "Finally, some entertainment." Henry tried to step between us, playing peacekeeper. "Marco, listen, wrong move." My boot met his midsection before my brain had time to form a full sentence. Down he went, arms flailing, the air leaving him in one wheeze of corporate surrender. I didn't even feel proud. I felt alive. For months, I'd been a ghost in my own marriage, a background character. That night, under the city lights, I became impossible to ignore. And then came the applause. Slow at first, sarcastic, then louder. A woman near the bar, Jessica, of all people, started clapping with this wild grin on her face. "Oh my God," she said, laughing between claps. "You're actually doing it." A few others joined in, maybe out of shock, maybe out of solidarity. The DJ, unsure what to do, let the song fade until only my breathing filled the air. Olivia screamed, "Stop it. This isn't you." I turned toward her, chest heaving. "You sure about that?" I said, voice steady and terrifyingly calm. "Because this feels pretty damn accurate." The ring came off without ceremony. A flick of the wrist, a tiny metallic ping against the floor. I didn't even aim. It just landed near her heels like poetic punctuation. "You can keep that," I said. "Call it a merger gone bankrupt." Phones were everywhere now, glowing rectangles held high, capturing every second. The modern Colosseum. Some people were horrified, others delighted. I could see it in their faces, half pity, half thrill. Nobody looks away from a car crash. Olivia tried to grab my arm, but I shook her off. "Don't touch me," I said, my voice low, dangerous. "You had your hands full already." The crowd collectively winced. I think someone near the buffet whispered, "Damn." Security hesitated, because how do you even break up a fight when the guy doing the dragging has justice on his side? Marcus was on his knees, blood dripping from his nose, mumbling, "I'll press charges." I crouched down beside him, just close enough for only him to hear. "Do it," I said. "But make sure you spell my name right when TMZ calls." Then I stood up, looked around, and realized, for the first time in months, every eye in the room was on me. Not Olivia, not her career, not the perfect illusion she'd built. Me, the husband, the guy she'd thought was invisible. And instead of shame, I felt clarity. "You people think titles make you better," I said, voice booming louder than the sound system. "You call men like me the help. But we're the reason your world doesn't collapse when your fancy espresso machine trips a breaker." A murmur ran through the crowd. I gestured at Marcus and Henry. These two geniuses were busy optimizing resources. Turns out, the resource was my wife. Someone snorted. Someone else choked on their champagne. I wasn't sure if I was giving a speech or performing stand-up, but at that point, it didn't matter. Every word was truth, raw, ugly, necessary. Olivia's tears finally fell, big, mascara-streaked sobs that might have worked 6 months ago. Now they just looked like a performance. "Please, Marco," she whispered. "Let's talk about this privately." I laughed, dry and hollow. Private's what got us here, Liv. The crowd shifted, uneasy but entertained. A few women looked at her with sympathy. A few men looked at me like they'd just seen their own fears come alive. Because that's the thing. Every man in that room had wondered, deep down, what he'd do if it were him. And now they were watching the answer unfold live, in HD, with free champagne. Eventually, a security guard approached me, tall, polite, and clearly praying I wouldn't punch him too. "Sir," he said carefully, "I'm gonna have to ask you to leave." I grinned. "Ask them first." I nodded toward Marcus and Henry, still sitting on the floor like failed Bond villains. The guard didn't respond, just held out his hand. I raised mine in surrender. "Relax," I said. "I'm done. I've already fixed the short circuit." The crowd actually laughed. Even the guard cracked a smile before escorting me toward the elevator. As I passed Olivia, she reached out again. "You've ruined my career," she hissed. I stopped just long enough to look her dead in the eye. "No, sweetheart. You ruined our marriage. Your career's just collateral damage." Then I stepped into the elevator and let the doors close on whatever she was about to say. The ride down was eerily calm. The faint sound of jazz still floated from the rooftop speakers, distorted and distant. My reflection in the mirrored walls looked like someone I almost recognized, a man who'd finally stopped begging to be seen. My knuckles throbbed, my chest ached, and somewhere inside, I felt the weirdest thing: relief. When the doors opened to the lobby, the world seemed quieter. The receptionist, oblivious to the rooftop chaos above, smiled at me like it was just another Saturday night. "Did you enjoy the event, sir?" she asked cheerfully. I chuckled. "Oh, it was electrifying. Outside, the night air hit like medicine. Cool, sharp, real." I loosened my tie, let the city noise drown out the leftover adrenaline, and started walking. People were still arriving, couples laughing, valet attendants running. None of them knew they were stepping into a scandal. I wanted to warn them. "Careful, the air up there's toxic." But I kept walking. Halfway down the block, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. "Marco Alvarez?" The voice was male, clipped, professional. "This is Officer Carter with the Denver Police Department. We received a call about an altercation at Prescott and Myers' corporate event." "Are you?" "Yeah," I said, cutting him off. That was me. There was a pause. "Are you still on site?" I looked around, smiled faintly. "Nope. I'm on my way home." He sighed. "Sir, we're gonna need a statement." I nodded to myself. "You'll get it. And a video, too." Then I hung up. By the time I reached my truck, the first notifications were coming in, texts from friends, co-workers, even my foreman. "Bro, you legend. Is it true you decked 2 execs? You're trending, dude." The internet works fast. I wasn't even home yet, and already, the video had gone from phone to fame. I sat in the driver's seat, stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror, and laughed. Not the bitter kind this time. The tired, almost delirious kind. "You really did it, Alvarez," I muttered. "You went full soap opera." Then I started the engine. Back home, the silence hit different. My house, our house, looked smaller somehow, emptier, but cleaner. Like it had been waiting for honesty to walk through the door. I poured myself a drink, sat at the kitchen table, and replayed the video someone had already uploaded. There I was, wild-eyed, furious, dragging betrayal into the light. The comments were a mix of chaos, half cheering, half diagnosing me with anger issues. But as I watched, I realized something. I didn't regret it. Not 1 second. Because that wasn't rage, that was truth with a pulse. That was a man refusing to be the punchline of someone else's story. By the time the sun started bleeding over the horizon, my phone was still buzzing, my hands still sore, and my heart strangely quiet. Olivia's texts piled up, apologies, explanations, bargaining attempts. I didn't open any of them. The world had already heard enough of her words. I stood up, stretched, and whispered to myself, "Guess I finally flipped the breaker." And just like that, I smiled, not the forced, polite kind. The real one. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't fixing anyone else's mess. I'd ripped out the faulty wiring, burned down the lies, and walked away before the smoke cleared. Sure, it wasn't pretty. But sometimes peace doesn't come softly. Sometimes it arrives swinging. If you've never woken up to find your face plastered across every social media feed in America, you don't know what true chaos looks like before coffee. My phone was vibrating like it owed somebody money. Dozens of missed calls, hundreds of texts, and more notifications than a Black Friday sale. I blinked at the screen, bleary-eyed, and there it was, the headline that would follow me for the rest of my life. Union electrician exposes cheating wife and executives at rooftop gala. The punch heard around Denver. I wish I could tell you I panicked. I didn't. I laughed. Like, full belly laugh, tears in the eyes laugh. Because the universe really outdid itself this time. I'd gone from invisible husband to internet legend overnight. All because I decided to turn a workplace affair into a live-action morality play. I poured coffee, sat on the couch, and watched the clip on repeat like it was my favorite sitcom. The angle, the lighting, perfect. Some partygoer even added slow-motion replays of Marcus's face meeting my fist, set to Eye of the Tiger. I couldn't have choreographed it better myself. By 9 a.m., I was trending in 3 states. People online had already given me a nickname, Blue Lightning. The comments were pure poetry. Finally, a man who didn't just walk away. Corporate karma strikes again. That dude's left hook deserves a medal. Of course, there were critics too, the yoga moms and moral philosophers of the internet saying things like, violence isn't the answer. Yeah, well, neither is catching your wife in a corporate threesome, Janet. Then came the memes. Oh, the memes. My personal favorite was a split screen. One side showing me dragging Marcus by the collar, the other showing Thor summoning lightning, captioned, when your union dues finally pay off. Another had my face photoshopped onto a WWE poster. The shocking truth, Blue Lightning versus the HR department. It was comedy gold. Somewhere out there, a 15-year-old with editing software had just turned my marital disaster into internet art. Around noon, my buddy Ricky showed up banging on the door like we were being raided. He burst in, phone in hand, eyes wide. Bro, you are a legend. He shoved the screen in my face, showing a news broadcast. There I was, in glorious HD, being discussed by a local anchor who looked both amused and mildly aroused. The unidentified man, now dubbed Blue Lightning, has gained massive online support after exposing 2 Prescott and Meyer executives during a company gala. Ricky grinned. They're calling you the people's electrician. I sipped my coffee. Catchy. Might put that on a t-shirt. He laughed. Dude, you realize you just torched 2 corporate careers and made Olivia the face of infidelity? I nodded, smirking. Yeah, I call that efficient energy use. While the internet was having the time of its life, the corporate fallout was biblical. Prescott and Meyer, Olivia's beloved company, went into full panic mode. Their PR team worked faster than electricians after a citywide blackout. Within 24 hours, they released a statement full of corporate jargon that basically said, "We condemn misconduct and are reviewing our internal policies." Translation, we're deleting everyone involved from the company website. And sure enough, by the next day, both Marcus and Henry had vanished from the leadership team page. It was like they'd been Thanos snapped out of existence. And Olivia? Oh, Olivia. My wife, ex-wife in progress, went from rising star to corporate cautionary tale in under 48 hours. She tried to spin it, of course. Posted one of those long growth and healing messages on LinkedIn about personal accountability and lessons learned. The comments section roasted her alive. You learned to keep it in your pants? Networking taken too literally. Even her old boss liked one of the sarcastic replies. You can't buy that kind of poetic justice. Meanwhile, my phone kept ringing. Reporters, podcasts, morning shows, even some influencer who wanted to collab. I didn't answer a single one. Fame is like voltage. Too much of it, and you'll fry your circuits. I didn't want 15 minutes of celebrity. I wanted 15 hours of silence. But then the calls started coming from people I actually knew. Old coworkers, union buddies, my mom. Mom left a voicemail that was pure gold. Marco, I saw you on TV. You looked handsome. Me, Joe, but maybe next time don't punch people in front of cameras, okay? I'm proud of you. But Jesus, wear gloves. Then, around 3 p.m., came the most satisfying call of all, from a divorce lawyer named Raymond Torres. He'd been recommended by Ricky, who swore the guy was like a shark with a law degree. Raymond's voice was calm, precise, and smoother than bourbon. Mr. Alvarez, he said, I saw your video. I assume you're ready to file for divorce. Yesterday I said, excellent. Do you have evidence of infidelity? I grinned. I have a cinematic masterpiece. He chuckled. Send it over. I'll make sure you get everything you're entitled to, and then some. See, Olivia and I had a prenup. She wanted it years ago, back when her career started taking off. Just a formality, she'd said. You know, for protection. At the time, I didn't care. I had nothing to hide, nothing to lose. Joke's on her, because that prenup included a clause about infidelity voiding spousal claims. She'd signed it herself, which meant that all her fancy bags, her car, even half the house she thought she'd take, gone. Raymond read it, whistled, and said, "Congratulations, Mr. Alvarez. You just saved yourself a small fortune." I leaned back in my chair, laughing. Guess honesty really does pay. Raymond didn't laugh. "You might want to stay offline for a bit. The media will dig. And your wife's firm? They'll try to spin this to protect themselves. But you have the leverage. Use it wisely." That night, I sat in the dark, scrolling through my messages. Thousands of strangers cheering me on, telling me I'd done what they only dreamed of. Every man who'd ever been cheated on saw me as their patron saint of payback. Every woman who'd ever been lied to called me brave. It was weird, intoxicating, but mostly sad. Because behind all the memes and the clapping emojis, there was a truth nobody really wanted to say out loud. Everyone loves justice until they realize it doesn't fix the loneliness afterward. I didn't sleep. The adrenaline was still running laps in my veins. I kept thinking about Olivia. Not her betrayal, but the quiet moments before all this. The mornings when she'd kiss me half asleep, whisper, "Don't work too hard." The way she used to text me photos of her lunch just because she thought it was cute. I missed that version of her, even if she'd only existed for a chapter. The woman in that office wasn't my wife. She was a stranger in designer heels. By morning, reality replaced the rush. My phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Olivia herself. "We need to talk." I ignored it. 5 minutes later, another. "Please, Marco. Just once. Let me explain." Explain what? That she'd traded our marriage for office gossip? That she'd reduced us to a punchline with a promotion? I tossed the phone on the counter and went to shower. But the thing about silence is, it's loud when you've got guilt crawling around in your head. By the time I stepped out, towel around my waist, my phone buzzed again, this time a voicemail. "Marco, it's me. Please pick up. I'm sorry, okay? Everything's falling apart. They fired me. Marcus is threatening legal action. I need you. I don't know who else to call." For a moment, a stupid, weak, human moment, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Then I remembered the video. The laughter. The way she told me to just say you work in facilities. Sympathy died right there in the steam. Instead, I called Raymond. "She's calling," I said. "What do I do?" He didn't miss a beat. "You do nothing. Let her drown in her own statements. We'll handle the rest." So I did nothing. For once, doing nothing felt powerful. By noon, the internet had crowned me king of consequences. Someone started a GoFundMe titled, "Buy the Man a Beer," which, disturbingly, actually raised $3,000 in 24 hours. Ricky texted, "Bro, you could quit and open a podcast." I texted back, "I'd rather eat drywall." Meanwhile, Prescott and Meyer scrambled to do damage control. They issued another public apology, this time name-dropping ethical accountability and employee wellness. Translation: we're terrified of getting sued. They put Marcus and Henry on indefinite leave. HR code for "don't come back," but we won't say it legally. Olivia, though? They couldn't fire her for sleeping with coworkers, not officially. So they called it mutual separation. Corporate poetry. I walked to the corner store later that evening, just to breathe something that didn't smell like anxiety. The cashier, a middle-aged guy with a mustache and too much coffee, squinted at me. "You that guy from the video?" I froze. Maybe." He grinned, sliding my beer across the counter. "You're a damn hero, man. My ex-wife cheated on me with my boss. Should have hired a DJ." I laughed all the way home. Because apparently, justice looks good in high def. When I got back, there was an envelope taped to my door. No address, no return label, just my name, written in Olivia's handwriting. I tore it open. Inside was a single note. "I still love you. I don't expect forgiveness. But please, don't let this be the end of everything." I folded it neatly, walked to the trash, and dropped it in. Because forgiveness is for accidents. Betrayal is a choice. That night, I poured myself a drink and looked out the window at the city, the same skyline that once made her eyes light up. It still looked beautiful, but now it belonged to me again. The lights, the hum, the quiet, all mine. And somewhere out there, Olivia was watching the same sky, realizing she'd traded her future for 15 minutes in a locked office. Funny thing about electricity, it always finds its way back to ground. And me? I was grounded now, scarred, famous, and finally free. You ever see a storm try to apologize? That's what it felt like the morning Olivia showed up at my door, mascara smudged, eyes red, hair pulled back in a way that screamed, "I've been crying in my car for hours." She was holding 2 black trash bags like a defeated raccoon, standing there on my porch in the same outfit she'd worn during our last argument. Except this time, her power heels had been swapped for sneakers. It was poetic, really. The same woman who once said she'd never go back to cheap shoes, now wearing them as repentance footwear. She knocked softly at first, then harder. Then the voice came, soft, shaking, rehearsed. "Marco, please." I stood behind the door for a good 30 seconds, just staring at it, coffee mug in hand, trying to decide whether I should answer or call pest control. My brain played tug-of-war between curiosity and common sense. But curiosity always wins with me. It's why I once stuck a fork in an outlet as a kid. Spoiler, didn't end well then either. When I finally opened the door, she flinched like I'd thrown something. "You look tired," she said. That was rich, coming from the woman whose face had just been featured on every scandal of the week blog in the tri-state area. "You look fired," I replied. Her lips quivered. "I lost my job." "I'm shocked," I deadpanned. Truly, who could have predicted that sleeping with 2 executives at once might mess with HR scheduling? "Please don't do this," she whispered. "I'm not here to fight." "Good," I said, stepping aside. "Because I'm all out of trophies." She hesitated before stepping in, like the threshold itself was judging her. The moment she entered, the air changed, heavier, awkward, thick with everything we hadn't said and everything we'd already shouted. She looked around, her eyes darting across the living room, the same one she used to decorate with catalog confidence. "You kept the couch," she murmured. "Yeah," I said. "It doesn't cheat." That one landed like a punch. She winced, looked down at her sneakers. "I deserve that." "Oh, don't worry," I said. "You deserve much worse, but I'm feeling merciful today." She placed the trash bags on the floor. "My sister kicked me out," she said quietly. "I've been staying with Trish, but Trish from HR." I interrupted. "The one who told me to smile more? You mean she finally found someone more miserable than herself?" Her mouth twitched, the ghost of a laugh. "She said it would be best if I found somewhere else to stay." "I don't have anywhere to go, Marco." I leaned against the doorway, crossing my arms. "You mean to tell me Marcus and Henry didn't open their homes to you?" "Tragic. They're gone," she said. "Marcus moved to Seattle. Henry's wife took the kids and left him. I ruined everything." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, you did. The difference is, I get to start over. You get to replay your mistakes in HD." She stepped closer, her voice trembling. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need closure. I need to explain." "Explain what, Olivia?" I snapped. "That you were lonely? That your boss made you feel seen? That you got so caught up in your career you forgot you had a husband waiting at home making dinner and fixing the damn heater?" Tears welled up in her eyes, the kind of tears that used to work on me, soft, persuasive, strategic. "Not this time. I didn't plan it," she said weakly. "Neither did I said. "But somehow, I still ended up starring in a viral documentary about how to ruin a marriage in under 10 minutes. She reached out like she wanted to touch my arm, but I stepped back. "Don't," I said. "You don't get to do that. You don't get to cry your way out of this one." Her composure cracked completely then. She dropped to the couch, sobbing, words spilling between gasps. I thought if I just worked harder, I could fix everything. I wanted to be somebody. I didn't mean to lose you along the way." "Funny," I said, because it looked pretty intentional from where I was standing. She buried her face in her hands. "You don't understand the pressure I was under." "Stop." I cut in, my voice sharp enough to slice through her excuses. "You had pressure? I crawl through attics full of asbestos for a living. I deal with guys who think GFCI stands for good freaking coffee inside. Don't talk to me about pressure." For a moment, the only sound was her breathing and the faint hum of the refrigerator. Then she looked up, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "I loved you," she whispered. I almost laughed. "No, you loved the idea of me. The dependable guy who'd keep the lights on while you chased promotions. The man who wouldn't embarrass you in front of your boardroom friends." I pointed to the TV, where my face, her scandal, was frozen on a paused news broadcast. Until I did. She turned away, voice breaking. "I was stupid. I wanted respect. I thought success would fill the emptiness. And did it? I asked. Her silence was answer enough. We sat there for a long minute, two ghosts haunting the same house. Then I stood. You know what the worst part is, Liv? You didn't just cheat on me. You mocked me. You turned the man who fixed your world into a joke you could edit out of your story. She nodded, sniffling. You're right. I did. And now? I asked. Now you want what, pity? Shelter? Redemption? She looked up, eyes wide and desperate. I just want a second chance. That broke me in a different way, not with anger, but with pity. The kind of pity that feels like exhaustion wearing empathy's skin. Second chances, I said softly, are for people who tripped. You jumped. She crumpled in on herself, whispering, I have nothing, Marco. No job, no friends, no family. Just you. Then maybe it's time you learn what it feels like to build something with your own hands, I said. You've spent your whole life climbing ladders you didn't build. Maybe now's your chance to grab a hammer. Her tears kept coming, quiet now. I loved our life, she murmured. The dinners, the laughter, the Sundays on the couch. I ruined it all. Yeah, I said. And the thing about ruins? They make great foundations for new construction, just not with the same architect. That's when she stood, wiping her face, trying to summon the Olivia who used to win rooms with a smile. So that's it. You're just done. Liv, I said, meeting her eyes. I was done the moment you decided my worth depended on your title. She looked like she wanted to argue, to plead, to bargain. But she saw it in my face, the finality. The breaker had flipped, and there was no turning the power back on. When I opened the door, the sunlight hit her face. Harsh, honest. She picked up her trash bag slowly, like lifting her own past. Where will you go? I asked, because despite everything, some part of me still cared. I don't know, she said softly. Somewhere no one recognizes me. Try Wyoming, I said dryly. They still believe in privacy there. She gave a weak smile, the kind that knows it's out of practice. You really won't ever forgive me, will you? I thought about that, about forgiveness, about closure, about whether it was even my job to grant her peace. Then I shook my head. Forgiveness isn't the problem. Trust is, and that died before the rooftop did. She nodded, tears spilling again, and stepped outside. I watched her walk down the driveway, shoulders slumped, pace slow, dignity stuffed in black plastic. The same neighbors who once waved at us on morning walks now peeked through curtains like it was primetime television. She loaded the bags into her car, glanced back once, and whispered something I couldn't hear before driving away. I stood there for a while after she was gone, staring at the empty street. The silence felt heavier than before, but cleaner, like the house itself had exhaled. Inside, I sat on the couch, picked up my phone, and scrolled through the headlines again. Blue Lightning, the man who shocked corporate America. Union hero or viral villain? I didn't care about either label anymore. I wasn't a hero, and I wasn't a villain. I was just a man who'd finally stopped fixing things that weren't worth saving. A few hours later, Ricky called. So, he asked. How'd it go? She cried. I made coffee, and she left, I said. He whistled. Cold, man. Warm enough, I said. The heater works fine. He laughed, but there was a pause. You okay, brother? Yeah, I said after a long moment. Actually, yeah. For the first time in a long time, I'm good. We talked for a while, about work, about life, about how apparently someone had started selling t-shirts with my face on them that said stay grounded. He thought it was hilarious. I thought it was ironic. When the call ended, I walked around the house, touching the walls, the furniture, the pieces of a life I'd once shared. It didn't feel empty anymore. It felt honest. That night, I made dinner for one, poured a beer, and raised it to the silence. To closure, I said out loud. And for the first time in months, the quiet didn't sound like punishment. It sounded like peace. People say rock bottom feels like a crash. They're wrong. It feels like silence. No more arguments, no more adrenaline, no more what-ifs echoing through your skull. Just quiet. And that's where I was, standing in the middle of my kitchen 2 days after Olivia's trash bag exodus, staring at a half-empty beer and realizing the world hadn't ended. It had just reset. There's a strange peace that comes after you've lost everything that was rotting you from the inside. No phone buzzing with fake apologies. No wife turning dinner into performance reviews. No more pretending that love was something you could fix with patience and overtime. It was just me, my tools, and a fridge full of actual food instead of meal prep containers labeled goals. The divorce moved fast, like grease through a drain. Raymond Torres, my new favorite human being and possibly a reincarnated courtroom shark, called me that Monday morning. "Good news," he said, voice slick and calm. The video went viral enough to scare her legal team. She's not contesting the divorce. In fact, she's begging for a non-disclosure clause. I grinned. "What's that mean for me?" "It means," he said, "she gets nothing. You keep the house, the car, your retirement, and your peace of mind. And since she was the one who breached fidelity, that prenup she loved so much, it's now your best friend." I let that sink in. For the first time in months, I felt the kind of relief that hits deep in your chest, like unclogging a pipe that's been jammed for years. "So she really gets nothing?" I asked. "Well," Raymond said, "she gets public humiliation and a cautionary LinkedIn post. That's something." I laughed so hard I almost dropped the phone. "Remind me to name my next kid after you." He chuckled. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Heal first, date later. You've got what most people never get, closure that comes with paperwork." And he was right. That signature, the one that ended a marriage, felt less like failure and more like flipping the breaker back on after a long blackout. The house wasn't empty anymore. It was mine again. Every room hummed with something honest. Work became therapy. I picked up extra shifts with the union, wiring new apartment buildings, fixing breaker panels, installing ceiling fans for people who still said thank you. There's something healing about manual labor. It demands your focus. You can't spiral emotionally while balancing on a ladder with 220 volts staring you down. The crew welcomed me like nothing happened. Ricky slapped me on the back during lunch and said, "Blue Lightning lives." "Don't call me that," I muttered, but I couldn't help smiling. The nickname had stuck, partly out of respect, mostly out of hilarity. Even the guys at the hardware store started greeting me with it. I'd walk in and hear, "Yo, Blue Lightning. Need another extension cord or a witness statement?" It was ridiculous, but it made me laugh, and laughter was a good sign. Marisol, who ran the union supply truck, was the first person to notice I'd started smiling again. She was tough as rebar, wore her hair in a messy bun, and could curse out a city inspector in 2 languages. One day she handed me a sandwich and said, "You look less haunted. Finally exorcised the demon." "Something like that," I said. "The power's back on upstairs." "Good," she grinned. "We missed your sarcasm. The crew's been too peaceful." We fell into a rhythm. Early mornings, long days, greasy lunches, and the kind of jokes that make you forget real life for a while. By the 3rd week, my hands looked worse than ever. Scraped, burnt, stained, but my heart felt cleaner. The real surprise came one Friday afternoon when Ricky dragged me to his niece's school to fix their busted lights. "It's volunteer work," he said. "Earn some good karma. God knows you need it." That's where I met Lisa. She was a history teacher, mid-30s, hair tied back, wearing glasses that somehow made sarcasm look elegant. I was up on a ladder replacing a flickering bulb when she walked in and said, "You know, this building's older than half the teachers here. You sure it won't collapse before lunch?" I looked down, grinning. "If it does, at least the lights'll still be working on the way down." She laughed, an actual laugh, not the polite, performative kind I'd grown used to. "You're not one of the regular maintenance guys, are you?" "Union electrician," I said. "Freelance superhero. Part-time viral scandal." Her eyebrows lifted. "Wait, you're that guy?" I sighed. "Depends who's asking. The internet thinks I'm a folk hero. My ex thinks I'm Satan with better shoulders." She chuckled. "Well, I think you're funny. That's rarer than heroism these days." We talked for an hour after that job, about teaching, about bad coffee, about how kids now think the Revolutionary War happened in the 1980s. She had this calm energy that made me forget I was technically famous for violence. Before I left, she said, "You should come to our spring fundraiser next week. We're raffling off baked goods and dignity." "Do they accept ex-husbands as door prizes?" I asked. "Only the well-behaved ones," she said, smiling. That's how it started. Over the next few weeks, Lisa and I became something. Not romantic at first, just 2 people who found comfort in laughter and long talks. She'd text me things like, "My projector died mid-lesson. You'd have loved it." Or explain to me why light switches make that click sound. "My students think it's magic." I'd reply with jokes about unions and existential dread. And one night, After a late dinner at a diner that smelled like burnt toast and nostalgia, she said, "You know what I like about you, Marco? You talk like life kicked you hard, but you kicked back harder." I looked at her across the table, her eyes bright and curious, and said, "That's the nicest way anyone's ever described trauma." We both laughed, and something in me softened. For the first time since the rooftop, I didn't feel like a meme. I felt like a man again. Work got busier. My crew started landing bigger projects, and they promoted me to lead electrician, not because of the video, but because I'd earned it. Ricky said, "See, man, karma pays dividends." I rolled my eyes. Pretty sure it's just seniority. But deep down, it felt good, like life was finally giving back what it owed. Evenings were quieter now. I'd come home, shower, cook something edible, and sometimes Lisa would stop by after school. She'd sit at my kitchen counter grading papers while I worked on small carpentry projects, tables, stools, things to keep my hands busy. She'd tease me about being a secret artist. I'd tease her about her terrible coffee taste. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't dramatic. It was real, steady, grounding, peaceful. One night, she found one of my old wedding photos while helping me reorganize the bookshelf. She held it up gently. "This her?" "Yeah," I said, glancing at Olivia's smiling face frozen in time. "That's the woman who taught me what not to settle for." Lisa didn't ask for details. She just set the picture down and said, "You've got good hands, Marco. You build things. You fix what's broken. Don't waste those hands holding on to ghosts." I didn't realize it then, but that was the moment I fell for her, quietly, without ceremony. Months passed. The internet forgot about Blue Lightning. Prescott and Meyer recovered their reputation. Olivia disappeared from headlines, probably living somewhere pretending none of it happened. And me? I just kept working. I fixed lights, repaired circuits, mentored apprentices. I rebuilt my life the way I rebuild wiring. Methodical, careful, making sure nothing sparked unless it was supposed to. One Sunday morning, I was installing a ceiling fan in Lisa's classroom while she graded tests. She looked up and said, "You know, I think you like fixing things because it gives you control." I grinned. "Of course, you can't control people. But wires? Wires listen." She smiled. "Well, some people listen too." Eventually, I climbed down the ladder, wiped my hands, and looked at her, really looked. The woman who'd seen me not as a scandal, not as a headline, but as a man just trying to start again. "You think people can be fixed?" I asked. She thought for a second. "No, but I think they can rebuild." That line hit harder than she knew, because that's exactly what I'd been doing. Rebuilding. Not replacing. Not pretending. Rebuilding. That evening, I took her to dinner. Nothing fancy, just tacos from a food truck parked near the river. We sat on the tailgate of my truck, watching the sunset turn the water gold. She leaned her head on my shoulder and said, "You know, you're not who I expected." "Who'd you expect?" I asked. She smirked. "A bitter guy with trust issues and maybe a punching problem." I chuckled. "That was version 1.0. You're looking at the firmware update." She laughed, and in that moment, I realized something simple but powerful. Peace doesn't come from revenge or justice. It comes from acceptance, from knowing that you can't change the past, but you can damn well wire a better future. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, and looked around the house. The light coming through the window hit the floor just right, golden, clean, calm. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something bad to happen. I'd done my time in the dark. Now I was standing in the sunlight, calloused hands, clean conscience, and a heart that was finally steady again. And as I grabbed my tool belt for another day's work, I smiled. Because I wasn't fixing someone else's mess anymore. I was fixing myself. A year later, the world had moved on, but I hadn't needed it to remember me. The headlines were gone, the memes forgotten, the noise replaced by something far better, quiet mornings and honest laughter. Lisa and I spent weekends fixing up the old house. She'd paint, I'd wire. Sometimes we'd argue about colors, but it was the kind of argument that ended with tacos, not tears. One Saturday, I got an email from Olivia. Long, polished, full of therapy talk and closure cliches. I read it once, then deleted it. No anger, no fireworks, just peace. Because the truth was, I'd already forgiven her the day I stopped needing her to understand me. That night, Lisa and I sat by the window, watching the city glow. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "The noise?" I said, "Nah, I like the hum better." She smiled, took my hand. Those same calloused hands that once broke, now building again. And for the first time, I realized the real revenge wasn't the punch, or the viral fame, or even the freedom. It was happiness, quiet, solid, earned. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything.